Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to play a segment in a moment, which is Pauline Hanson trying to justify her position in turning her back to the President of the Senate when the Senator was giving the welcome to country, a process they do every day. So I don't know if this means that they're going to turn their back every single day in this issue. But the interesting thing about this was that Sky News' Chris Kenny didn't like what Pauline Hanson had done, and he raised some issues with her. And I haven't got much time for Chris, but under these circumstances, I support the way he confronted Pauline. So I'm beginning to wonder whether Pauline's time on Sky News is limited, given her particular stand on this particular issue, and whether or not Sky News have got the message from Murdoch that they need to taper down some of their responses to what's happening in Parliament, and that they perhaps need to call out those people who are extreme, such as Pauline, and whether Pauline therefore is going to see herself less and less on Sky News. It remains to be seen. Hope that it is the case. But it's good to see that Chris has taken this as a moral issue, if you like, or an issue, as he refers to it, as being disrespectful of the chair and disrespectful of the Senate. So I'm going to play this for you, and here is Chris's response to all of this event.
I want to go to Pauline Hanson in Canberra in just a minute, but before I do, let me just show you what transpired in the Senate yesterday, just before we went to air, when the Senate President led the Welcome to Country, and the One Nation senators, all four of them, turned their backs.
I acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, who are the traditional custodians of the Canberra area, and pay respects to the elders past and present of all Australia's Indigenous peoples.
There you go. Let's go to Pauline Hanson, the One Nation leader and founder, joining us live from Canberra. Good to talk to you, Pauline. Now, you've done this before, but it's the first time you've had a team of senators all turn their back on the President when there's this welcome to country going on. Why be so impolite?
Chris, I haven't just done it recently. I know it wasn't the first time yesterday. I've been doing it for the past 3 years. The other two senators that have now joined me, they are of the same opinion. They have had a gutful of this welcome to Parliament on the Parliament floor every morning, plus also around the country. And the reaction from the...
Firstly, we need to note that it wasn't welcome to Parliament, it was welcome to country. So she has her wording wrong to start with, which is not unusual for Pauline.
It has been overwhelming. Just on two platforms, there's been over 7,000 views. There's been over, nearly 6,500 comments with it. That's just on one platform. And people are actually saying, good on you. You're standing up for us. We're fed up with this. We voted against the Voice. We don't want this. It's overdone. And I didn't do it in front of the Governor-General. This is when Parliament had started. So I wasn't going to be disrespectful then. But Chris, I have had enough, and I do not want a welcome to country and to be disenfranchised from my own country that I was born here.
You're not
and I want to make a point to the Australian people.
I think this is a really important point. This is where Pauline tries to use language that justifies her position, but trips herself up. This is shooting yourself in the foot, because Chris is about to challenge her about how she is somehow disadvantaged or disassociated with or not a part of the country. It's quite an interesting take, I thought.
I know you'll get a lot of support for this. I know I'll get a lot of criticism for my stance. Now, I agree that the welcome to country is overdone. It's ridiculous how often we see it at the start of various meetings and online forums and the like. But I think it's a really good initiative in the right place at the right time, the start of the grand final, at the start of some Indigenous events, and surely a place when you're opening Parliament and getting down to proceedings, it's just a respectful way to acknowledge the land that we all live on and the people that were here first and the culture that is ongoing. It's just polite.
All I can say here is that I congratulate Chris for this stance, because I think this is the stance. Now, a lot of people may argue that we do welcome to country too much. And that's fair enough. That could be a reasonable argument, I guess, even though I disagree with that. But nevertheless, it's a reasonable argument. But really what he's saying is that there are circumstances under which welcome to country is appropriate. He's not discounting it as something that deprives Australians of recognising the country in which they have born and their relatives lived. This is simply about respecting the Indigenous position in relation to this country, which is their country, more so their country because they've lived here for some 60,000 years, as opposed to those of us who have immigrated or for parents who have immigrated. So Chris makes some really good point here and needs to be congratulated, I think, for this particular stance.
Sorry, Chris. No, sorry, I'm past being polite. When I feel disenfranchised...
I want to know when Pauline was beyond being polite, particularly when we cast our mind back to the 1996 speech where she just outlined as Asians should not be allowed to enter Australia. We all remember that speech, Pauline, and back then you weren't polite and you haven't been polite ever since.
From my own country, and that's the feeling from the Australian people. And this is said every morning Parliament starts.
But how is it disenfranchised? How are you disenfranchised just to recognise our history?
Because to recognise that they are the traditional owners of the land, and then we see it go further than that. We see kids being indoctrinated in the educational system and that they actually have more rights over the lands than what the Australian people do. This is causing division, it's divisive. I'm not turning my back on the Australian...
For one moment, we have to understand that Pauline's stance around this and One Nation's stance and the extreme right stance around this particular issue is in and of itself divisive. There is no other way to argue it. To present the types of arguments that Pauline Hanson presents stink of racism. To me, it's as simple as that. You don't like coloured people. You don't like particularly those people that identify as Indigenous Australians. Pauline, I'll say this to you as often as I can because you don't care and you don't watch my channel anyway, but you are a revolting individual.
That's why I'm doing it. And that's why Australians are backing me, because you've got someone standing up, got the guts to actually stand up and say we've had enough of this. And governments will actually keep feeding this division if someone doesn't stand up to it.
Yeah, in that act you seem to be turning your back on Indigenous people or those people that want to recognise Indigenous culture. And look, I agree with you. A lot of this stuff is overdone, and of course there are Indigenous activists who overclaim. But just to open the Parliament and recognise that there were traditional owners of this land and recognise that is where we are meeting in the Parliament. How is that not just polite and inclusive and a general recognition of our country's shared history?
Chris, this is not about the opening of Parliament. This happens every morning that Parliament is sitting. So that's just not the opening of Parliament. If it's just the opening of Parliament, yes, I will accept that. But it's not just the opening of Parliament. As other people, even the street sweeper, the council worker, he had a gut for it because it's before they actually go and do their jobs.
Well, that was ridiculous.
This is my point. They do. Yeah, yes, it is. This is bloody ridiculous. So whether it's his job or whether it's my job, whether he's fed up with putting up with it, but I'm saying I'm fed up with putting up with it as well. So, it's not being disrespectful. I'm not talking my back on Australians. I'm turning my back on these policies and ideologies that are dividing our nation and the tokenism that's going on. It's about time. I've been speaking about this for the last 30 years. And look at the state of this country. It's in one hell of a bloody mess. I'm not pulling a stunt. I'm sticking to my values and my principles and what I believe in. I want to see a united country as one nation, not this division that's happening. And these people are pushing their own agenda. The activists, which we see with Lydia Thorpe on the floor of Parliament, have no bloody respect for any of our system, but she is there. So I'm standing up for what I believe in. I am Australian. I welcome people that are born here and people who actually come from overseas to migrate here. I welcome...
No, she doesn't. That's a lie. There's no way in the world Pauline respects Muslims and those people that come from a different background than her own. She is so out of touch with what the majority of Australians have to say. In fact, even though most Australians voted against the Voice, The reason why they did that was they simply didn't want to change to the Constitution. None of it has to do with welcome to country. To conflate the two is simply wrong, but that's just what Pauline is. And I'll just play the last section of this because I think it's worth noting as well.
Everyone that have a right to this land do not acknowledge people that because they're traditional owners.
Well,
that was introduced by Ernie Dingo in 1970 in the 1970s. It is not a custom of the Aboriginal people. That's rubbish.
Sure, but it's a nice idea and it's inclusive. I believe it's sad that you're doing that, although there has been so much of this overdone. That's why that Darebin council, or whichever council it was in Melbourne, and where that council worker stood up against it, that's where that overreach is so damaging, because people doing too much of this stuff, you get a backlash now where people want none of it, and you're talking about wanting to get rid of it from our parliament. I think that's very sad, because just after the welcome to country, of course, in the Senate yesterday, as they do every day, they also had this.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven.
Now, not everybody in the Senate is Christian, yet people show their respect to that tradition.
That is tradition and something that's done right for the educational system of schooling, and it's been in part of our history, Christian Judeo values that we have.
It isn't. It is Judeo-Christian, not Christian Judeos. Jewish people came first. So, Pauline, you have that wrong as well. But I do have to owe it to Chris for having at least the guts to draw out the comparison between the Lord's Prayer and the opening of Parliament, and which she doesn't object to for some reason. And there are lots of people in that Parliament who aren't Christian, and there's probably many people who are just atheists. But they respect the system and they listen to the Lord's Prayer without objecting to it, because that is simply the right thing to do. But people like Pauline, for whatever reason, are unable to do that.
And that's, yes, it has been part of it. Not something that's been made up, that's been pushed down our bloody throats. Chris, you've got to look at the fact is, it's saying that we acknowledge these people as the traditional owners, to pay them respect, past, present and emerging. Why should I pay someone respect? I don't know who they are, and emerging? Because some of these elders, I wouldn't give them the time of day because I don't have respect for it. People have to earn respect. You don't have to automatically give that respect.
Well,
respect
Pauline,
me as an Australian that was born here, and I have every right to be acknowledged for this land. If you keep handing the land to the Aboriginal people, you know what's going to happen? Who, if we ever have problems here and war is going to face our shores, who is going to sign up to fight for a land that we've been told we don't own or be part of?
Well, we're
Who's
not
going
being
to sign up
we're
to
not
fight
being
for
told.
and defend it?
We're not being told.
I just love the way Chris laughs at her at that particular point, because it's the stupidest argument you could probably ever hear. For some reason, people think that this land totally, I own my land, lots of people own their land. This is not the issue. The issue is just recognising that the Indigenous people, the first Australians, this was their land and we've taken it from them. It's just simply that. It is that simple. But morons like Pauline Hanson fail to seem to understand the significance of this for Indigenous people. And as she said, she doesn't know Indigenous people, and that you have to somehow learn respect. I want to know how Pauline Hanson thinks that she's earning the respect of the population given this sort of outburst. I don't understand it. I don't think it makes any sense. And I think because she's disrespecting another group of people, an important group of people, a people that have significant history in this country, who have a different sense of land, a different sense of spirituality, a valid sense of both of those two things, that somehow Pauline Hanson, who sees herself, I guess, as a Christian, somehow views herself as being separate from and better from anybody else. Yet this is the woman that's demanding respect from us. It's an absolute joke. So I'm just going to finish off the final bit because I think it's worthwhile.
Don't own it.
Yep.
We're just recognising that there were other traditional cultures here beforehand. And look, I knew you and I would disagree on this, but it was important to have the debate.
Yep.
So thanks for joining us, Pauline. I appreciate it.
I think that Pauline Hanson somehow has made her case worse. And I think that Sky News are recognising now that some of the issues that Pauline raises are just, I guess, illogical. They don't make any sense. They're irrational. And that I wonder whether Sky News from this point on are going to tolerate them anymore. In the meantime, I want you to subscribe to my channel if you don't mind. Ring the bell for further notifications. Let me know what you think of Pauline Hanson and her stand here. I did a post on it yesterday as well, but it keeps rearing its ugly head because she's so irrelevant. And I think it's about time that people started to tell Pauline to bugger off and to find other issues that she thinks is just as important as opposed to these racist tropes that she tends to want to exacerbate. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and make sure that you and the people that you love are safe.